The night air in the Catskills felt too calm to be real. Elena Nguyen, 7 months pregnant, pressed her palm against her belly, whispering to the tiny heartbeat inside her. "Almost home, little one," she said softly. The wind brushed her hair across her face as the lights from their Mercedes S-Class dimmed behind them. Her husband, Adrian Kane, was unusually quiet, his eyes reflecting the Mo King. He had said this was a getaway, a moment to reconnect before the baby came. He had even packed her favorite blanket and a box of chocolates. But something in his smile didn't reach his eyes tonight. It had that perfect, rehearsed stillness that used to make her proud at business dinner. Elena looked down from the overlook. The river shimmered far below, its current swallowing the moon. "It's beautiful," she whispered, trying to shake the unease. Adrian stepped closer behind her, his hands sliding around her shoulders, gentle at first. He smelled like Dio. "You know," he said softly, "life's unpredictable. You never fring." The sentence hung in the air, strange and heavy. Elena turned slightly, searching his face. That's when she saw his iPhone light up in his jacket pocket. Just one name flashing, Sloane. Her stomach turned cold. She knew that name, Sloane Hart. The sleek woman from Adrian's firm, the one who always touched his arm too long at parties. Elena had brushed off her instincts for months, telling herself it was just work. But the truth was staring at her, buzzing from his pocket in the dark. She stepped back instinctively, her heels scraping against gravel. Adrian caught her arm, too quickly. "Careful, babe," he murmured, though his tone was wrong, too smooth, too patient. Then his other hand pressed between her shoulder blades, firm, steady. She froze. "Adrian?" She breathed, but he didn't answer. The pressure increased. Her foot slipped. Rocks scattered down the cliff. A sickening silence stretched between them. And then, a shove. The world flipped. The sky became ground. The scream never left her throat. It tore out of her like wind. Branches whipped her arms as she tumbled, her body slamming into a ledge before plunging into icy black water below. Pain exploded through her side, stealing her breath. She hit the river, the shock jolting her lungs open. Water rushed in, freezing and fierce. Instinct took over. She kicked, clawed upward, gasping as her head broke the surface. Her hands reached for anything. Rocks, roots, salvation. The rain began to fall, soft and relentless. Up above, a figure stood at the edge, phone to his ear. Adrian's voice echoed faintly through the storm. "She slipped. Oh God, she slipped. Please, send help." His tone was steady, calm, rehearsed. Elena understood everything then. The hikes he insisted on. The new life insurance papers she had signed without reading. The sudden tenderness. He had planned it. All of it. Her chest ached, her baby kicked, as if begging her not to stop. "We're not dying here," she whispered, teeth chattering, eyes fixed on a faint light through the trees. A ranger station, maybe, or a miracle. She forced herself forward, dragging her broken body out of the river, mud clinging to her hands. Every step was agony, every breath a rebellion. The world narrowed to survival, to her and the life inside her. Behind her, the man she once loved turned his back, walked calmly to his Mercedes, and drove away without looking down. But Elena wasn't dead, and one day, he would wish she had been. Fluorescent lights stunned Elena's eyes as consciousness crawled back. The sharp scent of antiseptic burned her nose. Machines beeped steadily around her, one of them keeping rhythm with her baby's heartbeat. She was alive. Somehow, against every law of gravity and betrayal, she was alive. A nurse leaned over her, voice soft and blurred. "You're in Catskills Medical. You took a bad fall, honey, but your baby's strong. Real strong." Elena's throat ached when she tried to speak. The memory hit like a film reel she couldn't pause. Adrian's voice, that careful shove, the splash, the cold. She flinched, clutching her stomach. The nurse adjusted her blanket, concern in her eyes. "Your husband's in the waiting area. He's been frantic." Frantic. The word tasted bitter. Moments later, Adrian entered the room. Perfectly groomed, shirt tucked, not a scratch on him. His expression was a mask of concern, but his eyes carried calculation. He reached for her hand before she could move it away. "God, baby," he murmured. "You scared me to death. I thought I lost you." Elena stared, silent, her pulse pounding through the monitor. His act was flawless, too flawless. She caught the faint smell of his Dior cologne, the same scent from that night, and her skin crawled. "The ranger said you were lucky," he continued. "One more foot and—" His voice broke perfectly on cue. "I can't imagine life without you." She watched him press a kiss to her hand, careful to let the cameras catch it. 2 reporters waited outside the glass wall, alerted by his PR friend from the city. He wanted the story to spread. Devoted husband by wife's side after tragic fall. But the cameras didn't see the tremor in her eyes, the way her fingers curled into fists beneath the blanket. Later that night, when the hallway quieted, Adrian stepped outside to take a call. Elena shifted, just enough to see through the curtain gap. He was speaking low, but she heard the words clearly. "No, the policy's valid. They said accidental death, not disappearance. I just need to confirm the timeline." Her breath caught. He was checking the insurance. Not relief, not love, money. The room spun, not from pain but realization. She looked at her reflection in the steel IV pole, pale, bruised, eyes hollow, but alive. And she would stay that way long enough to make him regret every word. A soft knock broke the silence. A woman entered, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Kane, I'm Hannah Pham, hospital social worker. I heard about your fall. I just need to ask you a few safety questions, privately if possible." Elena met her gaze. Something about Hannah's tone felt safe. No performance, no pity. Adrian's voice carried faintly from the hall. She whispered, "Please, don't let him in again tonight." Hannah's eyes sharpened. She nodded, slid her ID badge toward Elena quietly. "City Domestic Crisis Unit." Elena's chest tightened. This stranger knew more than she said. When Adrian returned, Hannah smiled politely. "Sorry, sir. Visiting hours are over. She needs rest." He frowned but left after a show of hesitation. The door clicked shut behind him. Silence. Elena turned to Hannah, voice trembling. "He pushed me. My husband tried to kill me." Hannah didn't gasp or doubt. She simply said, "Then we make sure he never gets the chance again." Elena's tears came fast, unstoppable. Not from weakness, but from the sudden, impossible truth that someone finally believed her. She looked at the window, rain streaking down the glass like fingerprints from another life. Her body ached. Her baby shifted softly beneath her ribs, alive, fighting. She whispered to the reflection, "He thinks I'm broken, but I'm still here." And somewhere deep inside, a fire started that no river could drown. 3 days after being discharged, Elena stepped carefully into the penthouse she once called home. The silence was too smooth, too staged. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. The Tiffany vase of white lilies, the Cartier bracelet box on the marble counter, the faint trace of Dior perfume on the air. Adrian had turned their apartment into a movie set of grieving husband and lucky survivor. There were sympathy cards from his clients, a few luxury magazines, stacked neatly beside a MacBook Pro left open to his emails. Elena could feel his fingerprints on every detail. He came out of the kitchen with a smile. "You're home," he said softly, kissing her forehead. "I've been planning your recovery. Maybe a few days at the Ritz-Carlton, just the 2 of us. You need to heal, baby." His voice was sugar. His eyes were steel. She nodded, pretending calm. "That sounds nice." When he turned to pour water, her gaze landed on the console table by the door. A thick envelope rested there, unsealed. She reached for it casually while he hummed in the kitchen. The top page read, "Life insurance policy. Primary beneficiary, Adrian Kane." Her hand trembled. The date on the form was only 3 months old, right after she'd found out she was pregnant. The coverage amount, $5 million. Cause of payout, accidental death. She flipped through each page, her mind racing. The handwriting on the signature line was hers, but she didn't remember signing it. He must have slipped the form in among other papers, just like he did with the mortgage updates last year. "Elena?" Adrian's voice broke her trance. She slid the envelope under a stack of magazines and turned, smiling faintly. "Just looking at the mail." He crossed the room, hands gentle on her shoulders. "No stress, okay? Doctor said calm is key." His thumb brushed the bruise near her collarbone, lingering just long enough to remind her of the power he thought he still had. That night, Elena lay awake while he slept beside her. The city lights from Fifth Avenue spilled through the curtains, cutting the room in half. One side gold, one side shadow. She reached for her phone quietly, but then stopped. He could be tracking it. Instead, she used her old iPhone, the one with a cracked screen, tucked in a drawer. She opened the Notes app and created a new folder, naming it Baby Names. Inside, she typed a single sentence. "He pushed me." Then she copied the policy number and photographed every page with trembling hands. She hid the photos behind a photo album of sonogram pictures. At 2 a.m., she crept into the kitchen for water. The city below looked endless, cruelly beautiful. She caught her reflection in the window, hair limp, eyes hollow. A woman people might pity, but not believe. Her fingers brushed the Cartier bracelet Adrian had given her in the hospital. She studied it under the light, elegant, expensive, and cold. She unlatched it slowly and placed it on the counter. It clinked softly, like a shackle falling away. From the bedroom came the faint buzz of Adrian's phone. She glanced toward the sound. A message appeared on the screen, just visible in the dark. Sloan, she's quiet. Did the papers clear? Elena felt a sharp pain in her chest, not from fear, but fury. He hadn't just tried to kill her. He was still planning. She walked back to bed, breathing slowly, counting every step. Adrian stirred, half asleep. You okay? Yes, she whispered, sliding beside him, face turned away. I'm just tired. Her hand rested protectively over her stomach, over the child who had kept her alive. Her mind was already building a map. Names, times, evidence. He thought she was broken, docile, defeated. But beneath that stillness, something unstoppable was forming. He didn't know it yet, but his perfect crime had just met its first crack. The next morning, Elena woke to the sound of Adrian humming in the shower. That same calm hum he used whenever he was planning something. She slipped out of bed, grabbed her tote, and said she had a prenatal appointment. He didn't question it. Control made him confident. Instead of heading to the clinic, Elena rode the subway downtown. Her bruises still ached under her coat, her body reminding her of every inch of that cliff. The station walls smelled of metal and rain. She followed the address Hannah had quietly written on a folded receipt. Detective Rosa Morales, NYPD Financial Crimes Division. The precinct was small, nothing like TV. A coffee-stained counter, a humming vending machine, and a tired-looking detective with her dark hair in a low bun, typing behind a cluttered desk. Mrs. Kane? Morales asked, looking up with kind but wary eyes. Yes, voice shaking. I think my husband tried to kill me. The room went still. Morales gestured to a chair. Tell me everything. Elena's story came out in waves. The trip, the shove, the fake panic call, the life insurance forms. Morales didn't interrupt, only jotted notes, eyes never leaving her face. When Elena finished, silence lingered between them, heavy and electric. Do you have proof? Morales asked quietly. Elena slid her phone across the desk, showing the photos she had taken, the policy, the texts, the name Sloan. Morales studied each one, her expression unreadable. This isn't an accident, she said finally. And if you're right, your husband's been planning this for months. Tears burned Elena's eyes. He's charming. People love him. No one's gonna believe me. Morales leaned forward, voice steady. I believe you, but we'll need evidence, real legal time-stamped. You can't confront him, not yet. Let him think he's still in control. Elena nodded slowly. How? The detective opened a drawer and pulled out a small box. Inside was a cheap flip phone. Use this. No GPS, no synced accounts. Keep it hidden. Every time he mentions money, insurance, or trips, text me. We'll build a timeline. Elena hesitated, glancing toward the hallway as if Adrian might appear. Morales reached across the desk, voice softer. You're not alone in this anymore. I'll make sure of that. For the first time in weeks, Elena felt air in her lungs. Later that afternoon, she met Hannah at a small cafe in Queens. The city outside blurred through the rain-streaked glass. Hannah slid her an Amazon box filled with diapers, and the hidden phone inside, just as Morales had arranged. This thing's off-grid, Hannah whispered. Use it like your life depends on it. Elena smiled weakly. It already does. They sat in silence, two women holding more truth than they could speak. A baby cried at a nearby table, and Elena's hand went instinctively to her stomach. Hannah reached across and squeezed her hand. You'll win this. You hear me? You'll walk away free. When Elena got home, Adrian was waiting with takeout from her favorite Thai place. He played the perfect husband again, setting plates, lighting candles, even pouring her water with lemon. He smiled. Feeling better? Yes, she said quietly. Better every day. They ate in silence, the flicker of candlelight dancing on the Cartier bracelet she'd left on the counter. Later, as he fell asleep beside her, she slipped the flip phone from her bag, thumbed open a new message and typed to Morales. He's calm. Too calm. He's planning something again. She hit send, tucked the phone under the pillow and stared into the darkness. The fear was still there, but beneath it something harder was growing. Elena was done being the woman who fell. She was becoming the woman who would make him fall next. The River Cafe glittered beneath the Brooklyn Bridge that night, its glass walls reflecting the city's skyline like liquid gold. Elena stood at the entrance, her black maternity dress fitting awkwardly over her still-healing body. The maitre greeted her by name. Adrian had reserved the best table with a view. He was already there when she arrived, seated with perfect posture, swirling wine in a crystal glass. He rose with practiced charm, brushing a kiss across her cheek. "You look beautiful," he said softly. It sounded like a threat disguised as a compliment. The waiter poured her sparkling water. Adrian's phone buzzed face down on the table. The screen flashed briefly. Sloane. Her stomach tightened. He quickly flipped it over, smile never faltering. "Work thing," he said. "Ignore it." Elena smiled back. "Of course." Outside the window, the East River shimmered under the bridge lights. Inside, her mind was a war zone of calm and calculation. Morales's voice echoed in her head. "Stay composed. Collect evidence. Don't give him a reason to suspect." Adrian leaned forward. "You know, I was thinking we should do another trip. Clear our heads. Maybe the Palisades or Vermont, somewhere peaceful." Her pulse jumped. Another trip. Another chance. She stirred her water slowly. "That sounds lovely. When were you thinking?" He smiled, his teeth gleaming under the candlelight. "Soon, before the baby comes. We deserve a reset." Elena studied him, every gesture, every pause. He looked so casual, yet his eyes flicked toward her hand, the one she used to hold utensils. He was checking for tremors, measuring her fear. "You've always been the strong one," he murmured. "You survived something no one else could. I'm proud of you." Proud. The word almost made her laugh. When the waiter returned with their entrees, Elena's gaze drifted toward the far end of the restaurant and froze. Sloane Hart. Sitting alone, only 2 tables away, dressed in a navy sheath dress that shimmered when she moved. Her lipstick matched the wine in Adrian's glass. She wasn't trying to hide. She wanted Elena to see her. Sloane smiled faintly, lifting her glass in a silent toast before pretending to scroll through her iPhone. Elena's fingers tightened around her fork. The sound of silver scraping china filled her ears. "Something wrong?" Adrian asked lightly. She looked back at him, calm. "No. I was just thinking how lucky I am." He nodded, satisfied. "We both are." But her eyes didn't leave Sloane's reflection in the window, the reflection of a woman complicit in murder. As dinner ended, Adrian insisted on dessert. "Let's celebrate surviving," he said. "The new chapter." She agreed, forcing a small smile. When the chocolate mousse arrived, she excused herself, murmuring, "Bathroom." Instead, she turned toward the far table, pretending to check her phone, and discreetly snapped a photo, Adrian's hand brushing Sloane's under the tablecloth. The maitre looked away. No one wanted to interfere with people like Adrian Kane. Elena sent the photo to Morales from her secret phone. Proof. They were together tonight. She returned to the table, heartbeat steady. Adrian stood to pull her chair out like a gentleman. His hand brushed her back, the same spot where he'd pushed her weeks ago. When they stepped outside, Manhattan glowed across the water, a view tourists paid thousands for. Adrian wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "We're lucky, aren't we?" he said. Elena leaned into him, her voice barely a whisper. "Luck runs out." He laughed softly, not understanding. As they reached the valet, a drizzle began to fall. She looked up at the bridge, remembering the sound of the river the night he tried to end her life. The wind felt different now, not like fear, but warning. He opened the car door for her, smiling that same perfect smile. She met his eyes and thought, "You don't know it yet, but tonight I started writing your ending. And when it's finished, even the river will remember your name." A week after that dinner, Elena woke to the sound of footsteps outside their apartment door. Not the usual city echo, these were deliberate, careful, spaced apart like someone checking every board. Adrian appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his tailored navy suit, tie perfectly aligned. "Morning, sweetheart," he said, handing her a cup of tea. "You've been quiet lately. I thought we could go for a drive. Just us, clear our heads." Her stomach tightened. The same line, a drive. She placed the cup on the nightstand, her smile gentle. "Maybe tomorrow. My doctor said I should rest today." He studied her face for a second too long before nodding. "Of course. You know I just want to make things right." When he left for work, the apartment fell into a silence that wasn't peaceful. It was calculating. Elena moved quickly, lifting the bathroom vent cover where she'd hidden her backup phone. A new text from Detective Morales blinked. "Stay alert. Insurance company flagged suspicious call from him this morning." Her pulse quickened. He was getting impatient. That evening, the hallway light flickered as she took the elevator down to get groceries. But halfway, the lift jerked violently, shuddered, then went dark. The emergency light flashed dim red. Her hand clutched the railing, breath ragged. She hit the alarm button, but it didn't work. The panel looked tampered with, screws half loose, wires visible. Her heart pounded. This wasn't coincidence. When the doors finally pried open, the building superintendent's face appeared, pale and sweating. "Sorry, ma'am, the system glitched," he said quickly. But Elena saw the fear in his eyes, fear of someone richer, more dangerous. She stepped out without a word, snapping a quick photo of the control box with her secret phone. Evidence. By the time she returned upstairs, Adrian was home, loosening his tie, pretending casualness. "Everything okay?" he asked, pouring himself a drink. "The elevator stopped," she said evenly. "You should talk to management." He froze for a split second before recovering. "Really? Must be those cheap contractors again," she smiled. "Maybe." Later, when he showered, she sent the photo to Morales. The reply came within seconds. "Do not ride alone. He's escalating." Elena sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her reflection in the window, Manhattan glowing behind her, 1,000 lights burning for lives luckier than hers. She touched her belly. The baby kicked, strong, alive. "I know," she whispered. "We're not done yet." Adrian emerged in his robe, pretending warmth. "I've been thinking," he said, pouring her water. "You should sign some new paperwork, medical consents, just in case." She forced a small laugh. "Always planning ahead." "Of course, that's what good husbands do." He kissed her temple, lingering like a vulture disguised as a lover. When he turned away, she caught the faint reflection of a bruise beneath her collarbone in the mirror. The one he'd left when his affection got too rough last night. It wasn't rage that filled her this time. It was clarity. She reached for the Cartier bracelet still on the dresser, clasped it again, not as jewelry but as armor. Around midnight, her best friend Hannah arrived unexpectedly with 2 Starbucks cups and a paper bag. "Craving sugar?" she said, voice casual but eyes searching. Adrian frowned. "Didn't know we had company." Hannah smiled sweetly. "Surprise visit. Pregnant women need cheer, right?" Adrian muttered something about work and disappeared into his office. Once he was gone, Hannah whispered, "Morales called me. They're moving fast. Keep pretending. He's watching everything." Elena nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "He's not stopping." Hannah's voice softened. "Neither are you." When Adrian reappeared, the women were laughing over pastries, 2 friends sharing jokes, the perfect illusion. He leaned in the doorway, glass in hand. "You both seem happy." Elena looked up at him, her smile calm and steady. "Yes," she said, "I think happiness is finally coming back to me." And for the first time she meant it, because his control was already slipping through her fingers. The contractions came early, too early. It was just after dawn when Elena felt the first sharp pull in her abdomen. She was in the kitchen, pouring cereal, when the pain bent her double. Her breath caught, one hand gripping the counter. Adrian was still asleep in the bedroom, sprawled across the sheets like a man who owned the world. She steadied herself and called the hospital. "Your baby's coming," the nurse said urgently. "You need to get here now." Elena hesitated. She couldn't risk Adrian driving her. If she ended up in another accident, there might be no miracle this time. She grabbed the packed bag she'd hidden weeks ago, the one Hannah helped her prepare. Inside were essentials: baby clothes, documents, burner phone, and a folded note addressed to Detective Morales. She placed it in her tote and slipped out the door, every step heavy, slow, measured. By the time she reached the elevator, another contraction hit. She bit her lip, forcing herself not to scream. Outside, the air was sharp with city chill. A taxi honked, and she waved it down, sliding into the back seat. "Catskills Medical," she gasped. The driver nodded, speeding through early traffic. Elena clutched her belly, whispering to her baby, "Hold on, sweetheart. Just a little longer." At the hospital, nurses rushed her into a room. The pain came in waves now, powerful, consuming. Between contractions, her mind spun, not with fear but determination. Adrian couldn't be allowed near this child. Hours blurred into groans, tears, and the steady encouragement of strangers. When the final push came, a new cry filled the room. Raw, beautiful, alive, a boy, her son. Elena wept, holding him to her chest. "We made it," she whispered. "He'll never touch you." Moments later, she heard footsteps in the hallway, heavy, confident. Adrian. Somehow he'd found out. Her pulse raced. She pulled the blanket tighter around the baby. The door burst open. He stood there, holding flowers, camera-ready smile plastered on his face. "Elena! Oh my God, you did it! Our miracle boy." She stared at him, speechless. The nurses, fooled by his performance, congratulated him as he took photos beside the bed. The flash burned her eyes. He sat on the edge of her bed, lowering his voice. "You look exhausted. Rest, okay? I'll handle the paperwork." She forced a faint smile. "Thank you." When he stepped out, phone pressed to his ear, she heard his words clearly through the half-open door. "Yes, file claim status? What?" "No, she's alive, but it's just a matter of time. Postpartum complications happen." Her skin went cold. He wasn't done. Minutes later, Detective Morales appeared, dressed in plain clothes. Elena had texted her during labor using the burner phone. The detective walked in quietly, checking the hall before closing the door. "We have everything we need," Morales whispered. "We're watching him. But you have to disappear for a while." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I won't lose my baby." "You won't," Morales said firmly. "You'll protect him by leaving." Within hours, a nurse, one of Morales's trusted contacts, arranged for a private discharge under a false patient name. Hannah arrived with a car seat and a blanket. Elena placed a folded note on the empty hospital bed. "Adrian, we need space. Please don't contact me. Ever." By morning, Adrian returned to find only an empty crib and a nurse shrugging. She checked out early. He froze, confusion twisting into fury. Meanwhile, Elena sat in the back of a rideshare heading to Queens, her baby asleep against her chest. She looked out the window as Manhattan faded behind her. Every mile was freedom. Every heartbeat was proof that she had survived again. And somewhere deep inside, the woman who once begged for mercy had just learned how to disappear and fight back. Queens was quieter than Manhattan, but to Elena it sounded like peace. The air smelled of rain and laundry detergent from the corner laundromat. The small apartment Hannah found for her wasn't fancy. Just one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and sunlight that spilled through lace curtains. But it was safe, and that was everything. Every morning, Elena rocked her newborn on the couch while answering emails for the nonprofit she still technically worked for. They didn't know she was hiding. They just thought she needed family leave. Her laptop balanced on her knees, her baby asleep beside her, she began to breathe like a person again. Then one afternoon, Hannah showed up carrying coffee and something else, hope. "I want you to meet someone," she said. "A donor who funds women's safety programs. He's smart, decent, and discreet. You can trust him." Elena hesitated. "I don't need anyone right now." Hannah smiled knowingly. "I didn't say you needed him. I said you might like him." The next day she met Daniel Mercer at a midtown cafe. He arrived in a gray wool coat, clean-shaven, holding 2 lattes and the kind of calm that comes from living through storms. "Miss Nguyen?" he asked, his tone gentle, not probing. "Yes," she said, shaking his hand. They talked for over an hour. Daniel ran an aviation tech firm near Park Avenue, but he spoke more about people than profits. He'd grown up with a single mom and believed in helping others get out of dangerous situations. He never once asked for details about Adrian. He just said, "When you're ready to tell your story, tell it, not before." Before leaving, he handed her a simple white card, Mercer Air Technologies, private logistics and support. "If you ever need to leave town safely," he said, "I know a few pilots who don't ask questions." It sounded like a movie line, but something in his eyes made her believe him. That night, Elena sat by the window, watching lights flicker across the skyline. She opened her Kindle and read a passage from Atomic Habits Hannah had gifted her. "Small steps rebuild broken lives." She closed the device and whispered, "Then let's start small." Weeks passed. Elena grew stronger. The baby thrived, laughter returning to her life in pieces. Morales checked in often, her updates clipped but encouraging. "He's being watched," the detective said, "but he's getting desperate." Elena learned to file legal paperwork, document calls, record everything. She became her own witness. Daniel occasionally texted to ask how she was adjusting. Once, he dropped off supplies for her nonprofit under the pretense of business, leaving a small stuffed airplane for her son. When she thanked him, he replied simply, "He'll fly higher than both of us one day." Then, one afternoon, Daniel invited her to tour his office. "It's public, safe, and the security cameras are real," he joked. The building rose tall over Park Avenue, glass glinting in the winter sun. Inside, the air smelled faintly of espresso and leather. His office wasn't flashy, just efficient. A Mont Blanc pen rested beside a neat stack of project blueprints. He showed her a model of a small private jet. "These machines mean freedom," he said. "Not luxury. Escape routes for people who need to start over." Elena's fingers brushed the cool metal of the model wing. She thought of cliffs, rivers, and rebirth. "Maybe one day," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "Whenever you're ready." That night, back in Queens, she wrote Morales a message. "I want to help you build a case. I'm done hiding." Her reflection in the window looked different now. Tired, yes, but alive, centered, purposeful. The baby stirred, and she whispered, "He took my peace, but he won't take my future." And somewhere above the city, a jet flew past the moonlight, quiet, fast, free, just like the woman she was becoming. By February, Manhattan had turned gray with winter, the kind of cold that seeped into bone and memory. Elena walked quickly down Park Avenue, baby monitor clipped to her bag, heading toward Daniel's office. For weeks, she'd been building her secret project, proof that Adrian Kane wasn't just a liar, but a criminal. Detective Morales had already found suspicious money transfers, large sums labeled consulting fees to a PR agency under Sloan Hart's name. Each transaction matched a key date, one before the hiking trip, one after the hospital discharge. Morales texted, "He's covering his tracks. You're getting close." Inside Daniel's office, warm light glowed against the cold glass. He was standing at the whiteboard, sleeves rolled up, studying spreadsheets and photographs pinned like puzzle pieces. "You're early," he said, smiling faintly. "I couldn't sleep," Elena replied, setting her toad on the table. "I kept seeing his face in courtrooms that don't exist yet." Daniel chuckled softly, then gestured to the board. "We're close to connecting the dots, every fake invoice, every lie." Elena joined him at the board. Together, they mapped out Adrian's paper trail. The insurance policies, the fraudulent loans, the maintenance contractor who accidentally loosened the stair tread. Daniel unpepped pen and circled one name, William Carson, maintenance lead. "He was paid in cash 2 days before your near fall," Daniel said. "If Morales can flip him, that's enough to charge." Elena nodded, feeling adrenaline surge. "Then we make him talk." Daniel studied her face. "You're not sleeping, are you?" She smiled weakly. "Sleep feels like luxury these days." "Then let me buy you a coffee," he said, walking toward the small bar by his desk. He poured her a cup, steam curling into the air. "Cream?" "No," she said. "Black's fine." She sipped it, warmth spreading through her chest. On his desk lay a Mont Blanc pen, its gold tip reflecting the city light. She picked it up absent-mindedly, rolling it between her fingers. "You really think I can win this?" Daniel's eyes met hers. "You're not fighting to win, Elena. You're fighting to be free. That's different. And yes, you can." Her throat tightened. No one had ever said it like that before. At that moment, Morales called. Elena put her on speaker. "We've got something," the detective said. "Wire transfers from Adrian's account to Sloan's firm, coded as reputation management. They started 2 weeks before the cliff incident." Daniel's brow furrowed. "So he was planning how to spin her death before it even happened." "Exactly," Morales replied. "And there's more. The contractor, Carson, is ready to talk. He wants protection." Elena's heart pounded. "What did he say?" "He said someone called him from a burner phone the night before the stair malfunction. The call came from near your building." Elena's voice dropped. "Adrian? We'll prove it soon," Morales said. "Just keep calm, don't contact him, let us handle it." After the call ended, Elena stared at the city outside the window. The skyline looked sharper now, like the truth cutting through fog. "I'm not scared anymore," she whispered, "just angry." Daniel leaned against the desk. "Good. Anger, when focused, becomes power." That night, back in her apartment, Elena worked until dawn. She sorted screenshots, labeled folders, created timelines. The baby slept nearby, tiny hands curled around a stuffed airplane Daniel had given him. At 3:42 a.m., she uploaded all her files to a hidden drive titled Justice. Her last note read, "He built his empire on my silence." I'm taking it back one proof at a time. She closed her laptop and looked out at the snow falling over the city, soft and relentless. Down the street, a Mercedes idled in the shadows. Inside, Adrian watched the lights in her window fade. His expression was unreadable, but his hand tightened on the steering wheel. He still believed she was playing victim. He didn't know she was already building his cage. And once the last piece clicked, the man who thought he buried her would learn what it means to drown. The morning sky over Manhattan was silver, heavy with rain. Alina woke early, heart beating like a drum against her ribs. Today wasn't about survival anymore. It was about ending the game. Adrian had been calling nonstop for a week, alternating between threats and apologies. "You're overreacting," one message said. Another hissed, "If you ruin me, you'll regret it." So when he emailed her late last night asking to talk things through in public over coffee at the Plaza's Palm Court, she agreed. The detective had told her this was the moment to act. Morales' team would be nearby, watching. Elena stood before the mirror, adjusting her beige coat. The Cartier bracelet shimmered on her wrist, not as a symbol of love anymore, but as armor. She slipped her hidden recorder into the pocket and exhaled. "You're not his victim anymore," she whispered to her reflection. Downstairs, Daniel was waiting by the curb, leaning against his Mercedes. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "He thinks I'm still afraid. Let him." He nodded once, eyes steady. "We'll be inside. You're not alone." The Plaza's Palm Court was warm and golden, filled with tourists sipping tea and businessmen pretending not to eavesdrop. Crystal chandeliers reflected in the marble floors like stars trapped underfoot. Adrian was already there, dressed perfectly, smile rehearsed to the millimeter. "Elena," he greeted, standing. "You look radiant." She sat opposite him, placing her hands calmly on the table. "You wanted to talk." He leaned forward. "We can fix this. Forget the past. You, me, our son. We can be happy again." She almost laughed. "Happy?" "Yes," he said quickly, voice dropping to a whisper. "Just withdraw the complaint. Tell the detective it was an accident. I'll transfer the properties into your name. We can start over." Elena tilted her head. "You mean like we started over at the cliff? Or in the elevator?" His jaw tightened. "You're angry, I understand. But think of our child." "I am," she said softly. "That's why I'm here." He smiled faintly, thinking he was winning. "Good. Then let's—" She interrupted, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside were printed screenshots. His transfers to Sloan, the call logs, the insurance documents. "You planned it all, Adrian. You just didn't plan for me to live." His eyes flicked to the papers, then up to her. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," she said, voice low and steady. "You killed the man you pretended to be." Adrian reached for the envelope, but she stopped him. "There's a copy with my lawyer, another with the police. I came here so you could look me in the eye one last time." The color drained from his face. "You're bluffing." Elena leaned in. "Then why are your hands shaking?" At that moment, Sloan entered the cafe, designer coat glistening from the rain. She froze when she saw them, her confidence flickering. Adrian's eyes widened. "What are you doing here?" Sloan hesitated, but Morales stepped in from the side entrance, plain clothes blending in. Two officers followed quietly behind. "Mr. Kane," Morales said calmly, "you're under investigation for attempted fraud, insurance conspiracy, and attempted homicide." The entire cafe went silent. Adrian rose from his chair, furious. "You set me up." Alina met his glare. "No, Adrian, you set yourself up." He lunged forward as if to snatch the envelope, but the officers were faster. They pinned his arms behind his back, handcuffs clicking like justice itself. Gasps echoed from the tables. Cameras flashed from curious diners. As they led him away, he looked at her one last time, rage and disbelief colliding behind his eyes. Elena stood slowly, gathering the scattered papers. Her hands didn't shake this time. Morales nodded in quiet respect. "It's over." Outside, Daniel waited with an umbrella. She stepped into the rain beside him, feeling its cold honesty on her skin. The plaza's golden light shimmered behind them, fading with the man who thought she'd never rise again. And as they walked down Fifth Avenue, Elena whispered to herself, "This is how the story changes, when the prey learns how to hunt." Adrian Kane's downfall didn't explode overnight. It cracked slowly, like glass under pressure. The morning after his arrest at the plaza, the story hit every business headline. Real estate tycoon under investigation for fraud and attempted murder. Elena sat in Daniel's apartment, coffee in hand, her baby sleeping peacefully in the crib beside her. The TV played the news quietly. Adrian's photo, smiling, confident fake, flashed across the screen. Beneath it, scrolling text read, "Sources confirm ongoing financial crimes investigation." She exhaled shakily. "It's really happening," she whispered. Daniel glanced at her from across the table. "You earned this. You didn't just survive, you outsmarted him." Elena smiled faintly. "He'll try to talk his way out. He always does." "Let him talk," Daniel said. "The truth is louder." And it was. Within days, Adrian's investors began pulling out. One lender froze his accounts after Morales uncovered hidden wire transfers. Sloane Hart publicly distanced herself, calling herself a victim of manipulation. But Elena knew better. When Morales met with her again, she placed a folder on the table. "He's going to plead guilty to reduced charges if we drop the homicide attempt," the detective said. "But you'll still get civil damages, enough to secure your future." Elena looked down at the folder, at the stack of documents that once represented her death sentence. "Money can't fix what he broke," she said quietly. Morales nodded. "No, but it can build what comes next." Outside, rain streaked the precinct windows. Elena watched the drops race downward, remembering the night she'd fallen, the same endless descent, and realizing she was finally on solid ground. The next week, she attended a court hearing to face him again. Adrian entered wearing a gray suit, still immaculate, but his confidence was gone. He looked smaller, edges dulled by sleepless nights and ruined pride. Their eyes met across the room. For the first time, she didn't flinch. The judge read the charges: insurance fraud, conspiracy, endangerment, and Adrian's lawyer stood to negotiate bail. Morales whispered to Elena, "He won't get far. The financial evidence is airtight." Elena's heart steadied. She wasn't there to watch him squirm. She was there to reclaim her voice. When the session ended, reporters crowded outside. One shouted, "Mrs. Kane, do you forgive your husband?" She paused, holding her baby close, camera flashes lighting her face. "Forgiveness isn't freedom," she said calmly. "Accountability is." The quote trended within hours. By the end of the week, Adrian's company, Kane Developments, was in shambles. Partners withdrew, luxury cars repossessed, properties seized. The penthouse he once flaunted stood empty, lights off, silence echoing through marble halls that once held lies. Elena visited the building one last time, with Morales's clearance to collect her remaining belongings. She walked through each room slowly. The smell of his cologne had faded. The framed wedding photo lay face down on the floor. On the kitchen counter sat the Cartier bracelet he'd given her, the one she once thought meant love. She picked it up, turned it in her hand, and placed it gently into an evidence box. Daniel met her in the lobby, holding an umbrella. "You ready?" "Yes," she said, stepping outside. The air felt different, lighter, honest. As they walked down the street, she looked up at the skyline. The city that had once swallowed her now seemed to open before her. "You think people can really start over?" she asked. Daniel smiled. "Only the ones brave enough to burn the past." She laughed softly. "Then I guess I'm on fire." Behind them, news vans lined the block, lights flashing, reporters murmuring about the empire that had fallen. Elena didn't look back, because while the world obsessed over his collapse, she was already building something new. Something clean, strong, and finally hers. The Hamptons in early summer smelled of salt, pine, and new beginnings. The sky was wide and forgiving, the kind of blue Elena hadn't seen in years. Daniel had invited her and her baby boy for a quiet weekend away. No reporters, no lawyers, no ghosts, just air and sunlight and healing. The beach house stood on a small bluff overlooking the Atlantic, all white shutters and weathered wood. Waves crashed below like applause from the earth itself. Elena stepped out onto the porch barefoot, her son perched on her hip, his tiny fingers gripping her hair. "You didn't have to do this," she told Daniel when he brought out coffee. He smiled. "You deserve somewhere that doesn't hold his shadow." She looked out at the horizon. "It feels like I can finally breathe again." Daniel nodded, leaning against the railing. "That's what freedom feels like. Quiet at first, but it grows." They spent the morning walking the shoreline, the baby giggling at the cold surf licking his toes. For a long time no one spoke. Words weren't needed. The waves did all the talking. Steady, endless, patient. When they returned to the porch, Daniel handed her a small book. "A friend told me you'd like this," he said. It was Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Inside the cover, he'd written a single line: "Your scars are the proof you fought to live, not the evidence you were broken." Elena's eyes blurred with tears. "You keep giving me things I don't know how to thank you for." He smiled softly. "Just keep living. That's thanks enough." They sat together as the sun rose higher, warm light spilling across the wooden floor. The baby slept between them, the world, for once, utterly still. But healing isn't quiet forever. That afternoon, Elena's phone buzzed, a message from Detective Morales. "He's negotiating a plea deal. It'll be official soon." Elena read it twice, her hands trembling slightly. "It's almost over," she whispered. Daniel studied her expression. "You okay?" "I will be," she said. "I thought I'd feel relief, but all I feel is empty. Like my whole life was built on surviving him, and now he's gone." Daniel leaned forward. "Then it's time to start living for yourself. The past doesn't deserve to be the only story you tell." The words hit deep. Elena turned toward the sea, letting the wind whip her hair. For the first time, she imagined a life not defined by fear, but by choice. That evening, as the sun melted into the ocean, Daniel lit a small bonfire in the sand. They roasted marshmallows, laughter mixing with the waves. Hannah called over video chat, teasing, "So the beach looks good on you, Mrs. Matt. Almost new life." Elena laughed, cheeks pink from the firelight. "It feels like I'm finally home." After the call, Daniel handed her a glass of wine. "To survival?" he asked. She shook her head gently. "To resurrection." They clinked glasses, and for the first time, Elena didn't look over her shoulder. She didn't fear the dark. She trusted it again. When the baby stirred, Daniel took him carefully, rocking him until his cries faded into the rhythm of the waves. Elena watched, something warm and unfamiliar blooming in her chest. Later, she stood at the water's edge alone, the moonlight silvering the sea. She whispered to the night, "We're safe now." Behind her, Daniel's voice came soft and steady. "You're not just safe, Elena, you're free." She turned, smiling through tears. And for the first time since the fall, she believed it. Because freedom finally had a face, and it looked a lot like love. Autumn crept into Manhattan quietly, turning Central Park into a blaze of gold and fire. Elena's life had settled into a rhythm: mornings at the nonprofit, afternoons with her son, evenings with Daniel. Yet under the calm, one thread of unfinished business still tugged at her. Adrian's trial was approaching, and Morales needed one final piece of proof: the missing link between Adrian's orders and the night of the attempted murder. That's when Detective Morales brought in someone new, a retired private investigator named Delaney. Gray hair, slow voice, eyes that had seen too many secrets. "I don't scare easy," he told Elena when they met in a corner booth at a small cafe in Soho. "But what your husband pulled, that's a different kind of evil." Elena nodded, sliding a folder across the table. "These are the payments Morales found. The contractor who tampered with the elevator. His name's Carson. He says Adrian used a burner phone." Delaney thumbed through the papers, his movements precise. "You mind if I dig a little deeper?" "That's why we called you," she said. 3 days later, he called back. "Got something. You might want to sit down." They met again, this time at Daniel's office overlooking Park Avenue. The evening light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting everything in warm amber. Delaney laid out photos, security stills from a corner kiosk downtown. Adrian, wearing a baseball cap, buying a disposable phone the day before Elena's accident. Elena's breath caught. The timestamp matched perfectly. "That's him," Delaney nodded. "I traced the phone's activation signal. It pinged off a tower near the overlook where he pushed you." Daniel exhaled, low and steady. "That's the link Morales needed." Elena stared at the photo. Adrian's hand on the counter, his expression cold, efficient. It wasn't shock she felt, it was confirmation, proof that her instincts hadn't been madness after all. Delaney slid one more document across the table. "Here's the real kicker. He called Sloan from that phone 30 minutes after you fell. She deleted her call logs, but the telecom company kept metadata. He didn't report you missing until an hour later." Silence filled the room. The truth was no longer a theory. It was tangible, undeniable. Elena sat back, tears stinging her eyes. "He bought a phone just to kill me." Daniel reached for her hand, "And now he's going to pay for it." That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the city's glow pulse against the dark. On the coffee table lay a copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, a gift from Daniel. She opened it to a marked page and read aloud, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." She closed the book slowly. "No," she whispered. "The best revenge is justice done right." The next morning, she met Morales at her precinct office. "This is it," Morales said after reviewing the photos. "We'll file it as direct evidence. The DA will love this. You've done good, Alina." "I just told the truth," Alina replied. Morales smiled faintly. "And the truth is the one thing men like him never expect to face." Later that day, Daniel found her at the nonprofit's rooftop garden. She was staring at the skyline, wind in her hair. "So it's over?" he asked. "Almost," she said. "Now the court has to hear it." Daniel slipped a small object into her hand, a silver keychain shaped like wings. "A reminder," he said. "You don't owe gravity anything anymore." She laughed softly, tears bright in her eyes. As the sun dipped behind the towers, Alina felt the weight on her chest ease. The investigation had begun as survival, but it ended as vindication. She wasn't the woman who fell anymore. She was the one who climbed back up, with proof, purpose, and peace. And soon the world would know exactly who pushed her and how far she'd risen since. The courthouse on Center Street buzzed with tension that morning. Reporters gathered outside like vultures waiting for the first drop of blood. Alina stepped out of the black SUV, her navy dress simple but commanding. Daniel walked beside her, silent but steady, carrying a folder marked Kane versus State of New York. She could hear cameras clicking, questions flying through the air. "Mrs. Kane, do you feel safe facing him? Do you expect a conviction? Is it true he offered you money to withdraw your statement?" Alina kept her gaze forward. "The truth doesn't take bribes," she said quietly, and walked through the doors. Inside, the courtroom smelled of paper, polish, and fear. Adrian was already seated at the defense table, looking thinner, paler. His lawyer whispered to him, but his eyes were locked on Alina the moment she entered. The same eyes that once charmed her into believing in forever. Now they looked desperate. Judge Morales, no relation to Detective Morales, presided with cool authority. The trial began with quiet formalities, evidence displays, and witness testimonies. But the air thickened when the judge called the next witness, Mrs. Elena Nguyen Kane. Elena stood, smoothing her skirt, and walked to the stand. She raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth, and faced the man who had once sworn to love her. The prosecutor began gently. "Mrs. Kane, can you tell the court what happened the night of May 14th? Elena inhaled. "He took me to the Catskills, said it was a surprise. We stopped at an overlook. He asked me to look at the stars. When I turned around, he pushed me." Gasps rippled through the room. Adrian shifted, jaw clenched, trying to mask his fury. The prosecutor handed her a photo. "Do you recognize this?" She nodded. "It's the phone he bought the day before. The one used to call Sloane Hart 30 minutes after the fall." The jury leaned in. The prosecutor continued. "And who found this evidence?" "Detective Rosa Morales and a private investigator named Delaney. They traced the purchase and tower pings." Alina's voice stayed steady, though her hands trembled slightly. She wasn't scared of him anymore, only of losing her composure before the truth was fully spoken. Then came the defense. Adrian's lawyer stood, smirking. "Mrs. Kane, you suffered a traumatic fall. Isn't it possible your memory is unreliable?" She met his eyes, calm as ice. "My body broke that night. My memory didn't." The lawyer shifted tactics. "You were under stress, pregnant, emotionally fragile. Could your perception—" "My perception," she interrupted, voice cutting like glass, "was of my husband's hands on my back. That's not stress, that's betrayal." A murmur spread through the gallery. Even the judge's gavel struck late. Reluctant to interrupt the silence, she commanded. When her testimony ended, she stepped down and passed by Adrian's table. He leaned slightly, voice a low hiss. "You'll regret this." She paused, turning just enough for him to see her smile. "You already do." The prosecutor called Detective Morales next. Her testimony was surgical. Every transfer, every call, every lie documented in black and white. The evidence was undeniable. By afternoon, the courtroom lights dimmed with exhaustion. The judge adjourned for the day. Outside, reporters crowded again, shouting her name. Elena held her son in her arms as Daniel shielded them from the flashes. "How do you feel?" one reporter yelled. She looked straight into the camera. "Alive. Finally alive." That night at home, she watched the news replay her words. Commentators called her brave, strong, unshakable. But inside, she felt only stillness, a quiet power that didn't need applause. Daniel sat beside her, hand over hers. "You did it," he said softly. "No," she replied. "I told the truth. The rest is up to justice now." Outside, the city lights flickered against the window like stars reborn. And in that glow, Elena realized something deeper than victory. She had already won the moment she stopped being afraid to speak. Manhattan glittered that night like a living jewel. The Plaza Hotel's ballroom pulsed with light, champagne laughter, and the sound of cameras. It was the annual gala for the nonprofit Elena once worked for, the same organization that helped fund safety flights for women escaping abuse. Tonight, Elena wasn't a survivor in hiding. She was the guest of honor. The year had passed since the trial began. Adrian's verdict was days away. But the evidence had already buried him in the court of public opinion. His empire had rotted from the inside out. He'd been denied bail again, and his name was poison in every social circle that once adored him. Elena arrived at the gala in a simple black Dior gown, elegant and understated. Daniel walked beside her in a tailored suit, his calm presence grounding her. They entered through the golden doors as the crowd turned. Cameras flashed like lightning. "She's really here," someone whispered. "That's her, the wife who survived." But Elena didn't flinch. Her heels clicked against the marble floor like the slow rhythm of a heartbeat finding peace. Hannah rushed over, eyes sparkling. "You look like you own the room." Elena smiled. "Maybe I finally do." The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, white roses, and soft jazz. On stage, the event director adjusted the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "tonight we celebrate courage, the kind that changes lives. Please welcome our keynote speaker, Miss Elena Nguyen." Applause rippled through the hall as she stepped forward. The lights dimmed. Her image appeared on two giant screens beside the stage. She paused, scanning the faces, donors, politicians, journalists, all watching the woman they once read about in Scandal. She began softly. "A year ago, I stood on a cliff, believing I was about to die. Tonight, I stand here because I refused to stay silent." The crowd hushed completely. "I learned that evil doesn't always wear a monster's face. Sometimes it smiles, holds your hand, and says it loves you while it plans your end. I also learned something else. Truth survives longer than fear." Her voice grew stronger. "We talk about bravery like it's loud, but it isn't. It's quiet. It's a mother signing papers she's terrified to read. It's a friend showing up when the world walks away. It's a detective who believes a woman the first time she speaks." Morales, standing near the back, bowed her head slightly. Hannah wiped her eyes. Elena continued, "I'm not here to relive the past. I'm here to prove that surviving isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning." Applause thundered through the ballroom. Cameras flashed. For the first time, she didn't shrink from the light. Then, as if on cue, a murmur spread through the crowd near the entrance. Sloane Hart had arrived, uninvited. Dressed in icy silver, she hovered by the door, reporters swarming. Elena didn't flinch. Instead, she looked toward her, lifted her glass, and said into the microphone, "To the people who taught me what strength looks like, even the ones who tried to break me, you showed me what I never want to become." Gasps rippled through the room. Sloane froze, her mask of composure cracking. Daniel joined Elena on stage, offering his hand. "Time to go?" he whispered. She smiled. "No, time to rise." The music swelled again. The audience stood in ovation, the sound echoing against marble and glass. Later, outside beneath the soft glow of Fifth Avenue lights, Elena looked up at the skyline. "This city tried to bury me," she said, "but I grew roots instead." Daniel squeezed her hand. "And now the world's finally seeing the woman who climbed back up." She exhaled slowly, peace settling in her chest. That night, under the glittering towers of Manhattan, Elena Nguyen wasn't a victim or a headline. She was living proof that justice could wear heels and walk proudly into her own light. The applause was still echoing when the ballroom doors slammed open. For one suspended moment, every glass froze midair. Cameras turned, murmurs rippled like wind through silk. Adrian Kane stood at the entrance, pale and furious, flanked by two uniformed officers he had somehow slipped past. His prison suit had been replaced with an expensive blazer, but the handcuff marks on his wrists gleamed under the chandelier. Gasps swept the room. How did he get out? Someone whispered. Elena's breath caught, but her spine stayed straight. This wasn't fear, it was instinct sharpening to purpose. Adrian, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. You don't belong here. He smiled, the kind of smile that once charmed investors and destroyed lives. Oh, I think I do. You wouldn't be this famous without me, sweetheart. The crowd tensed. Journalists lifted phones. The live stream of the gala now captured a real-life nightmare unfolding beneath crystal light. Daniel moved closer, ready to step in, but Elena raised a hand. Let him talk. Adrian's eyes blazed. You ruined me. You think this city respects you? They pity you. You're nothing without my name. Her voice stayed calm, steady, slicing cleanly through the tension. Then let's remind them what your name really means. She turned toward the AV technician at the back of the room. The man, prepped by Morales' team, nodded and hit a key. Instantly, the ballroom screens lit up, not with her presentation, but with police footage, financial documents, and voice recordings. The first audio clip played, Adrian's own voice on the burner phone. Make sure the railing's loose, just enough for a slip. The room fell into stunned silence. Adrian froze, color draining from his face. Another clip followed, Sloane's voice trembling. You said she'd be gone, Adrian. You promised. The crowd erupted in shocked gasps. You think you can humiliate me? He shouted, lunging forward. Two security guards intercepted, holding him back. Elena stepped closer to the microphone. No, Adrian. You humiliated yourself. You tried to buy silence with luxury, but truth doesn't have a price tag. Every flash from the cameras burned brighter now. Adrian struggled, his voice cracking into rage. You planned this. Yes, she said simply. The same way you planned my death. The officers pushed through the crowd, Morales leading them. Mr. Kane, she said calmly, your parole has been revoked. You're under arrest for violating court orders and tampering with evidence. The ballroom erupted in chaos, reporters shouting, guests filming, the orchestra awkwardly frozen mid-note. Adrian turned one last time toward Elena as Morales cuffed him. You'll never erase me. She met his stare with quiet steel. I don't have to erase you. You erased yourself. He was led out through the same doors he'd stormed in from. The sound of applause followed, not for him, but for her. A spontaneous, thunderous wave that filled the gilded room with something holy. Elena's eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. She looked toward Morales and mouthed, "Thank you." The detective nodded once before disappearing through the doors with her team. Daniel stepped onto the stage, his hand warm against Elena's back. "You all right?" he whispered. "Yes," she said, breath steady. "It's over this time." "Really over?" She looked toward the ballroom doors, now closed again, and exhaled. "Yes. Justice doesn't knock twice, it walks straight in." The crowd rose to their feet. Cameras flashed. Somewhere in the distance, Manhattan's skyline glittered, indifferent yet eternal. Elena raised her champagne glass to the audience. "To truth," she said, her voice strong, clear, alive. "It always shows up, eventually." And as the orchestra resumed playing, she realized this wasn't revenge anymore. It was redemption, shining brighter than any chandelier in the city that once tried to break her. The trial's final verdict came 3 weeks after the gala incident. Rain lashed against the courthouse windows as if the sky itself demanded justice. The city waited, restless and electric. Inside, Elena sat quietly behind the prosecution table, hands folded in her lap. Daniel and Detective Morales flanked her, silent anchors on either side. Adrian was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, wrists cuffed. The arrogance that once defined him had drained away, replaced by hollow eyes and trembling hands. He looked older, smaller, like a man finally meeting the reflection he'd been running from. The judge entered, papers in hand. "The jury has reached a decision," she announced. The courtroom stilled. 12 faces turned forward, their expressions carved from stone. The foreman stood, voice steady. "We find the defendant, Adrian Kane, guilty on all counts: insurance fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder." The words hung in the air, sharp as thunder. Adrian's head dropped. Elena exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. The judge's gavel struck. Sentenced to 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 10. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras clicked. Elena's heart pounded, not from victory, but from release. The chains were gone. Adrian turned his head toward her, his voice cracking. "You destroyed me." She met his stare evenly. "You destroyed yourself the moment you touched me with hate." The bailiff pulled him up, but Adrian struggled, shouting, "You'll regret this. You'll see, Elena." The judge slammed her gavel again. "Remove the defendant." 2 officers escorted him out. His voice faded into silence as the doors shut. Elena sat motionless, eyes fixed on the empty space where he'd stood. Morales leaned close. "It's over, Elena. Really over." She nodded slowly. "Then why does it still hurt?" Morales smiled sadly. "Justice isn't painless. It's just honest." Outside the courthouse, the rain had stopped. The air felt washed clean. Reporters crowded again, flashes blinding. "How do you feel, Mrs. Kane?" one shouted. Elena paused at the top of the courthouse steps. The city's skyline loomed behind her, bright and endless. "Justice took time," she said softly, "but time never forgets." Applause broke out from the bystanders gathered below, strangers who had followed her story, who now saw courage instead of tragedy. Daniel guided her through the crowd, shielding her from the chaos. "Where do you want to go?" he asked once they reached the car. "Home," she said, "but not the old one. I don't want any of that back." They drove quietly through the city, past Central Park, past the lights of Fifth Avenue, where once she had walked beside a man who pretended love. Now she sat beside one who had earned her trust. At a red light, Daniel spoke softly. "You didn't just win, Elena. You set something right. Maybe not just for you, but for every woman who's ever been told to stay quiet." She looked at him, tears rising but not from sorrow. "Then maybe that's the only victory that matters." He reached for her hand, holding it without words. That night, at home, she tucked her son into bed. The lullaby she hummed wasn't one of survival anymore. It was one of peace. She turned off the light and stood by the window, watching the city move, alive and forgiving. Her phone buzzed, a message from Morales. "Transfer complete. Court ordered restitution in your son's name. Adrian Kane will never touch a cent again." Elena smiled faintly, typing back, "Thank you for everything." She placed her phone aside, poured a glass of wine, and stepped onto the balcony. The skyline glittered like a crown. She whispered into the night, "You took my past, Adrian, but I kept my future." And somewhere, deep in the quiet heart of Manhattan, the storm that had chased her for years finally broke, leaving behind nothing but light. Spring returned to New York with a gentleness that felt almost unreal. Cherry blossoms fluttered along Central Park's paths like confetti from heaven, and the air carried that rare kind of calm that comes only after storms. Elena stood before a mirror in a small chapel, tucked between brownstones, adjusting the lace on her simple ivory dress. No veil, no diamonds, just grace. Her son, now a bright-eyed toddler, toddled in holding a tiny bouquet of white roses. "Mommy pretty," he said proudly, his smile pure sunlight. She knelt, kissing his forehead. "Mommy's happy," she whispered. "That's even better." Daniel waited outside in the courtyard, talking quietly with Hannah and Detective Morales. He wore a navy suit, no tie, just the quiet confidence of a man who had nothing to prove. When Elena stepped out, he turned, and for a moment the world seemed to still around them. "You ready?" he asked softly. She smiled. "I've been ready my whole life, I just didn't know it." They walked hand in hand into the chapel. Only a handful of guests filled the pews. Hannah, Morales, Daniel's sister, and a few close friends. There were no reporters, no photographers, just peace. The minister began the ceremony. Sunlight spilled through the stained glass window, painting the floor in gold and sapphire. Elena's heart beat steady, no tremors of fear, no ghosts of cliffs or hospitals. "Love," the minister said, "isn't the absence of pain, it's the presence of healing." Elena felt tears press against her lashes, but they were warm, not bitter. Daniel's vows were simple. "You've taught me that courage doesn't roar. Sometimes it just whispers, 'Try again tomorrow.' And I'll spend every tomorrow proving you were right." Her voice trembled as she replied, "You met me when I was broken, and you never tried to fix me. You just stood close enough for me to remember what safety feels like." When the minister declared them husband and wife, the applause was soft but full of meaning. Daniel kissed her forehead, gentle and sure, and Elena felt the weight of the past dissolve. Later, at the small reception in the chapel garden, Morales clinked her glass. "To Elena," she said, voice proud. "You reminded all of us what justice looks like, with heels, with heart, and with grace." Everyone laughed, even Elena, the sound light and free. Hannah pulled her aside and handed her a small gift wrapped in white paper. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet engraved with 3 words, "Still I rise." Alina's eyes filled. "You've always been my sister," she said. "Always will be," Hannah replied. As the afternoon stretched into sunset, Daniel lifted their son into his arms. The child giggled, grabbing at cherry blossoms floating on the wind. Elena watched them, heart full. Later, when the guests left and the chapel grew quiet, she stood at the altar again, tracing the edge of the wooden cross. She whispered a silent promise, not of revenge, but of gratitude. Outside, Daniel waited by the car, the city glowing behind him. "Where to now, Mrs. Mercer?" he teased. She grinned. "Anywhere but the past." They drove through Central Park as the lights blinked on, New York alive and breathing. In her lap, Alina held an old copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, pages worn from nights she'd leaned on its wisdom. She opened it to a highlighted line, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one." She closed the book and smiled to herself. The road stretched ahead, endless and kind. For the first time, she wasn't running from anything. She was walking towards something beautiful. And as the skyline faded behind them, Elena and Gwyn Mercer finally knew that freedom wasn't the absence of pain. It was the courage to love again, without fear and without apology. A year passed like a sigh, soft and full of light. Elena woke to sunlight spilling across white sheets in their Park Avenue apartment. The city hummed below, but for once she didn't feel its weight, only its rhythm. Beside her, Daniel slept, his hand loosely resting on hers. Their son, now 2 years old, giggled from the hallway, clutching a toy airplane. "Mommy, Daddy, wake up!" he called. Elena laughed, pulling him onto the bed. "You're up early, Captain," she teased. "Plane go fast," he shouted, swooping the toy through the air. Daniel groaned, half asleep. "You've created a pilot." "He's yours," she said with mock exasperation, kissing their son's hair. They spent the morning making pancakes, music playing softly in the background. On the kitchen counter lay an opened letter from the fertility clinic, the words "confirmation of pregnancy" printed in neat black ink. Elena had found out just 2 days ago. She hadn't told Daniel yet. She wanted to see his eyes when she said it out loud. After breakfast, they walked through Central Park, cherry blossoms falling like pink snow. Elena's life used to feel like glass, fragile, breakable. Now it felt like sunlight, uncontainable. They stopped near the carousel, their son chasing pigeons while Daniel bought coffee from a small cart. "You ever think about how far you've come?" he asked, handing her a cup. She smiled. "Every day. Sometimes I don't recognize that woman anymore, the one who begged life to spare her." "She didn't just survive," Daniel said. "She rebuilt the world from ashes." Elena squeezed his hand, the secret swelling in her heart. "Daniel," she said softly, "I have something to tell you." His brows lifted. "Good news or trouble?" "Both," she said, smiling. "We're gonna need a bigger apartment." It took him a second. Then realization dawned. His coffee nearly slipped from his hand. "Wait, are you?" She nodded, eyes shining. "Yes, we're having another baby." Daniel laughed, a deep, joyful sound that drew stares from passers-by. He pulled her close, forehead against hers. "You keep giving me reasons to believe in miracles." Later that afternoon, they strolled down Fifth Avenue. Elena paused outside the Tiffany window display. Instead of diamonds, she admired a simple silver charm shaped like a heart. "2 kids," she whispered, half in disbelief. Daniel caught her gaze. "You want it?" She shook her head. "I already have everything I need." They ducked into a nearby cafe. The scent of espresso and vanilla filled the air. On her Kindle, open beside her coffee cup, glowed the page of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck. A line read, "Happiness comes from solving problems, not avoiding them." She smiled to herself. That used to be her life, a string of avoided truths. Not anymore. That evening, back home, Daniel printed a photo of the new ultrasound and taped it on the fridge beside a drawing their son had made of their family, stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. Elena stood there for a long moment, hand over her growing belly. "Are you scared?" Daniel asked, stepping behind her. "No," she said honestly. "Not anymore. I know how to start over now. I know how to live." The city lights reflected off the glass balcony doors. The same skyline that once held her nightmares now shimmered like an ally. She took Daniel's hand, leading him outside. The wind lifted her hair as she looked across the horizon. "You realize this is our first real peace?" he said. She nodded. "Peace and promise." The baby kicked gently, as if agreeing. Elena smiled through tears. And in that moment, surrounded by love, laughter, and the forgiving hum of New York, she understood that happiness wasn't something she had to earn. It was something she finally allowed herself to keep. The morning sky over the Catskills shimmered pale gold, washed clean by spring rain. The same cliffs that once nearly became her grave now looked calm, almost sacred. Elena stood at the overlook, the wind brushing her hair, her hand resting protectively on her growing belly. Behind her, Daniel was unloading a small picnic basket from the car. Their son, now old enough to run, chased a butterfly near the guardrail, the new guardrail, taller and reinforced, gleaming like redemption. "Careful, sweetheart," Elena called. "I'm okay, Mommy," the boy shouted back, laughing. Daniel joined her at the edge, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "So this is the place," he said quietly. She nodded, "where everything ended and started again." They stood in silence, listening to the rustle of trees and the distant rush of water below. Elena's breath came steady. She wasn't shaking. Not anymore. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a photo, the last picture ever taken of her with Adrian, smiling before the fall. Without a word, she tore it into pieces and let the wind take them. The fragments swirled through the air, vanishing into the valley. Daniel watched her. "How does it feel?" "Like gravity finally forgave me," she said softly. From the car, Morales and Hannah approached, carrying thermoses of coffee. The four of them spread a blanket on the grass, their laughter mixing with birdsong. Morales raised her mug, "To justice and new beginnings," Hannah added, "and to women who write their own endings." Elena smiled, her eyes wet but bright, "And to the people who believed me when I couldn't believe myself." They clinked cups. The world felt light. After lunch, Morales handed Elena a sealed envelope. "You might want this. Court records say it's yours now." Elena opened it. Inside was the title deed to the Kane Foundation account, Adrian's forfeited restitution. Millions of dollars redirected by the court to her nonprofit's name. She looked up, stunned. "I never asked for this." Morales shrugged. "He owed you more than money. Use it for something good." Daniel smiled. "You could expand the safety flight fund, help women get out before it's too late." Elena nodded slowly, feeling her heart swell. "Then that's what I'll do, something that turns pain into protection." Later, as the afternoon sun sank lower, they walked toward the edge again. Her son toddled beside her, holding her hand. "Mommy," he asked, "is this where the bad man was?" Elena hesitated, then knelt beside him. "Yes, but he's gone now. The bad things are gone." He looked up at her with the simple wisdom of children. "Then we don't need to be scared anymore." She smiled, brushing his hair back. "No, baby, we don't." She stood and turned toward Daniel. "Do you ever think about how strange life is? The place that almost killed me became the place I feel most alive." He took her hand. "Maybe that's what healing really is, standing where you once fell and feeling no fear." They stayed until the sun dipped behind the ridge, painting the sky in amber and rose. Elena took a small bouquet of wildflowers from the basket and laid them near the new railing. "For the girl I used to be," she whispered. "She fought hard to get me here." When they left, the wind picked up, scattering petals across the cliff. Elena glanced in the rearview mirror one last time, the overlook glowing in golden light, not as a memory of pain, but as a monument of strength. That night, back in Manhattan, she wrote the final entry in her journal. "I went back to where he pushed me. This time I walked away by choice. My story doesn't end with revenge. It ends with peace." She closed the notebook, set it beside her bed, and kissed her son goodnight. And as she turned off the light, the world felt still, whole, and healed. Because for the first time, Elena Nguyen's story didn't belong to pain. It belonged entirely to her. So, that's how the story ends, my dear friends. You're still here, aren't you? If you've made it this far, maybe something in Elena's journey has touched your heart in a quiet, powerful way. Her story isn't just about revenge. It's about rebirth. It's about standing up when life has tried to break you and saying, "Not this time." Elena's strength reminds us of what Marcus Aurelius once wrote. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Healing isn't loud. It happens in silence. In the moments when you choose peace instead of anger, when you choose to rebuild instead of collapse. We all carry cliffs in our lives, places we've fallen, places we fear to revisit. But like Elena, we can return to them one day, stronger, calmer, and free. That's the real victory. If this story reached something deep inside you, please leave a like, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel. Because together, we're not just watching stories, we're learning how to rise again.